First Take on a Thursday. Max Kellerman, Molly Karen, how are we, Max?
Molly, what's going
how
on?
we doing?
Stephen A. all day. What's up, man?
Stephen A. and NY.
What's up? What's up? What's going on? Good morning. How y'all doing?
We're good.
Very good. Very good. Ready to
Yes,
go.
sir.
All right,
let's roll.
Let's get into it. So we are going to start in the NFL. Say what? ESPN.com's panel of 50-plus NFL experts picked the greatest 100 players in the NFL headed into the 2016 season. At the very top is Texan star J.J. Watt, Aaron Rodgers, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, and Von Miller rounding out the top 5. Not much love for last year's MVP Cam Newton, who comes in at number 10. Stephen A., do you have a problem with Watt being number 1 overall?
Hell yes, I do. J.J. Watt is big time. We understand that in terms of being a defensive player of the year, being as elite as he is. He deserves our respect, no doubt about it. But Aaron Rodgers should definitely be number 1 as far as I'm concerned. Tom Brady should be ahead of him. Antonio Brown should be ahead of him. Cam Newton damn sure needs to be ahead of him. Even Big Ben Roethlisberger should be ahead of him. J.J. Watt is a master at getting at the quarterback, drawing double teams, triple teams sometimes. It requires the attention that his talents mandate and deserve. We respect that. We understand it. We're not taking anything away from him, but it is absolutely asinine to the highest order that this guy would be considered the best player, the most impactful player in the NFL. It makes no sense whatsoever. He has no business being ahead of at least 4 quarterbacks that I can think of. Again, that is Aaron Rodgers. That is Tom Brady. That is Cam Newton. That is Big Ben Roethlisberger. He also has no business being ahead of Antonio Brown. I'm telling you, I wouldn't even put J.J. Watt top 5. I would definitely put him, if you're talking about elite defensive players, well, we can have a discussion there, and he'd probably be 1 or 2. But in terms of guys who have a profound impact on the game, whose impact resonates throughout their locker room in such a fashion that you can't help but recognize how elite they are. I just gave you at least 5 dudes, arguably 6, that come into the equation before you even think of the name J.J. Watt. It is ridiculous, but once again, this is one of these ESPN.com rankings that it's politically incorrect for us to call out, but damn that, I'm calling it out. It's ridiculous. J.J. Watt should not be number 1.
First of all, the criteria for this, Stephen A., you're wrong. The criteria for this is they're just rating the players. They're talking to a whole bunch of folks, not just ESPN people, and they're asking to rate the players at their positions. So J.J. Watt is graded out the highest. It's like a Madden rating of 99 at a certain position. Doesn't mean you're necessarily better than all the quarterbacks. It just means you're rated higher, in J.J. Watt's case, as a defensive end than the quarterbacks are rated as quarterbacks. But you know what? Forget all that. Let's talk about the impact of J.J. Watt. He is such an awesome presence that he actually gets MVP consideration as a defender in this day and age, in this quarterback era. He is so awesome, you have to give him consideration as an MVP. Look, everyone you just mentioned, Aaron Rodgers, you and I probably agree, is the best in the game. I think Cam Newton has a shot to unseat him. Tom Brady, though he's not showing real signs of decline yet in terms of his numbers, maybe the greatest quarterback of all time. He's not available for the first 4 games this year. He tailed off at the end of last year. Aaron Rodgers, by his own standards, did not have a great year last year. And yet J.J. Watt, through his first 5 seasons, the only player in the NFL history, to have 2 20-sack seasons. He has the 2nd most sacks through 5 seasons in history to Reggie White. He is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. 3 out of 4 years, the only player in history to do that. Well, but 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
He's been in the league 5 years. 3 out of 4 is Lawrence Taylor. Willie McGinnis wrote a column about, you think he knows something about defense? About how J.J. Watt has a chance to unseat Lawrence Taylor as the greatest defensive player ever. Already, the quality of his prime is very comparable. I mean, you could even argue for it against Bruce Smith's prime and Reggie White's prime. It's that excellent. Really, the only thing he really needs to become at least the greatest defensive end who ever lived is longevity. It's saying a whole lot. You know, Reggie White played 15 years and Bruce Smith 19 years. But if J.J. Watt keeps this up for another 4 or 5 seasons and then tails off over a couple of seasons, he's going to go down as the greatest defensive end ever. And he's in his prime now, right now.
But first of all, you know, I'm very, very shocked to hear you say this, considering how intellectual, cerebral, and analytical you may be. I'm very confused as to how simplistic you sound. Here's J.J. Watt. Understand this. I don't disagree with the argument that he is elite as a defensive player. I mean, the man had 3 surgeries, for crying out loud. He played through injuries last year. He had 17.5 sacks. I think he had like 50 hits, for crying out loud. 29 tackles for a loss. The dude is elite, about 8 knockdowns. This dude is big time. As a defensive player, we understand that. But what is your obligation? You have 2 responsibilities. Get at the quarterback, assist in stopping the run. That's basically it. That's what you do. Now, you're elite at doing it. You're the best at doing it. And when you talk about impact comparable to that of Lawrence Taylor, although I would challenge that to some degree, because all you got to do is run away from J.J. Watt, whereas with Lawrence Taylor, who was a middle linebacker or an outside linebacker, you're sitting there and you're looking at him and he could go in either direction, whereas J.J. Watt, you can take traffic away from him by and large, and that could be very, very beneficial to you. We recognize and understand and appreciate his impact playing in his position, how elite he is, how much of a future Hall of Famer he is. Nobody's disputing that. But when you talk about the best, you're comparing him to any position on the football field. I personally don't believe he belongs even in the same sentence as elite quarterbacks because of the mere job description that they have at the disposal, how important the position is, what they mean to a particular team. J.J. Watt is that same dude that had a 2-14 record in 2013. They won 9 games over the last 2 years with Bill O'Brien there, okay? But that's because Bill O'Brien and Rick Smits put requisite parts around them, even though they couldn't find a quarterback, and some of those parts improved. But when you talk about impact, as great as J.J. Watt is, there is but so much you could do playing at a position that's relatively limited in terms of having a profound impact on the outcome of a game. But what about the quarterback? You shouldn't even be mentioned with him.
You're right. But the fact that he is Stephen A., think about that for a second. You're right. Rush, get after the quarterback, stop the run. And even though McGinnis, in that same article where he said he may replace LT as the greatest ever, and I agree with you, LT is the greatest ever, was even saying, look, he's right now stopping the run a lot on his athletic ability. He needs to improve technique there in order to have longevity. But just the fact that that's all you got to do, and you are universally considered every time the subject of MVP comes up, I'm sure we'll be talking about it later this year. Should J.J. Watt get any votes? Could he possibly win the MVP? When you're right, in this day and age, with all the responsibility of the quarterback and the limited scope of the responsibilities of a defensive end, he's even in that conversation. And by the way, Jadeveon Clowney, who's being a little slept on, if he can put it together this year, and I think there's reason... Stop! To be optimistic.
Did you just say Jadeveon Clowney is being slept on?
A little slept on, yeah.
Let me say for the record, slept on.
Yeah.
I'm snoring. I'm in a coma about Jadeveon Clowney. Could you show up and play? Could you be eligible to wear a uniform
because
on a Sunday
Jadeveon Clowney gets after it. Those two.
You got to be crazy.
Yeah.
Sleeping. I am snoring on Jadeveon Clowney. Don't get me wrong. I'm not snoring on his skills. I know he can play.
But then you'd be
snoring on his. Hold it.
Not sleeping. There's a distinction.
The best ability is availability. Jadeveon Clowney, I am snoring. I'm waiting to see him play. I don't recall seeing him play. I don't recall. Last time I saw him play with his penultimate last season in South Carolina, because the last season he took the year off because he didn't want to get hurt. He's been hurt since he got in the pros. I am snoring on him. I took 3 Ambiens on Jadeveon Clowney. He must be crazy. You must be crazy.
Save this tape, please, producer.
That's
save
right.
this tape.
That's right. Save
if Clowney stays healthy,
I'm going on history.
If Clowney stays healthy, my point in bringing him up is if you give J.J. Watt help on the other side, he is so excellent that immediately you give him another pass rusher, and it's like he has the impact of a quarterback. It's all of a sudden the Texans, you got to be like, oh my God, you got to play the Texans.
What are you going to tell me next, Max? The sky is blue on a sunshiny day. Who the hell doesn't know that? Of course, that's the reality.
Do you know who?
But Jadeveon, when has Jadeveon Clowney been available for you to bring him up in such laudable terms?
If
Jadeveon Clowney, really?
Yeah.
How would you know? Hold on.
He's pretty good.
Hold on.
I got eyes.
I understand. I live in a world where plausible deniability is apropos sometimes. But here's the reality, Max Kellerman. What evidence do you have that Jadeveon Clowney can play on this level? On this level.
Eyeballs.
What evidence? Where is it?
Eyeballs.
Where is it?
The optic nerve.
What eyeballs? I haven't seen him. When have you seen him? I haven't seen him in 3 years. When have you seen him?
Can we get back to J.J. Watt? Do you really want to talk about Jadeveon Clowney? Are you so afraid that I'm beating you in the Watt argument? You're trying to take a detour with Clowney? Is that what's going on here?
You must be crazy.
Do you know who's number one in fumble recoveries since he entered the league? J.J. Watt. He is everywhere. Yeah. He's a nightmare. When I think about the greatest defensive players I've ever seen, he's already, I think LT, you're right, I think LT number one. I actually think Deion Sanders number two in terms of his ability to affect the outcome of a game.
We agree
and then
there.
I think Bruce Smith, J.J. Watt, he's already in my imagination as one of the best I've ever seen. And while at quarterback, as great as Aaron Rodgers is, Cam Newton, Tom Brady, there's less of a value over replacement at the elite level. They're all amazing. J.J. Watt has put distance between himself, I'm not saying any defender, and the next best defensive end. And he's being rated at his position as the top guy, I think correctly.
Well, what I'm saying to you is this. We don't dispute anything. See, this is where you're slick. You understand what I'm saying? You've been talking to people and you try to get slick. It doesn't work with me, Max. I'm an expert at this stuff. I see what you're leaving out. You don't change the narrative. Nobody's questioning the elite stature of J.J. Watt as a defensive player. We know that defensively he's the best in the game. A matter of fact, I'm on the verge of putting him ahead of Bruce Smith, to be quite honest with you. But let me be very, very clear. Regardless of any of that, no defensive end has any business being put ahead of Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady
what do you want them to
Cam Newton
what do you want them to do?
Big Ben
if they talk to 50 people,
and even Antonio Brown.
Okay, Stephen A., what do you want them to do?
Business.
If they're putting together a list where they're talent evaluators, scouts, writers, and analytics, and they're saying who's at their position, how do you rate this guy? How do you rate this guy? And Watt winds up with the most points. What do you want him to do? Make a weighted average? That's not what this is. And my point is, even if you made a weighted average, Watt is so gangster, he's still in the conversation.
He's still in the conversation in terms of a league MVP, depending on the success of his team. We know what he can do individually, but even with what he does individually, it's not measurable. Watt at his best is not comparable to Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Big Ben or Cam at their best. That's my point. So why even put him up in there? Because so we can discuss it, so you can agitate people with such an idiotic proclamation. I'm talking about the poll here, not you. I'm saying that you're going to sit up there and take a defensive end and say a defensive end with two responsibilities: rush the passer, help stop the run. That is your definition of the best player in football. As complicated as the game of football is, as comprehensive as it is, especially at the quarterback position. And you're going to tell me with elite quarterbacks, with Aaron Rodgers and his talent, with Tom Brady, 4 chips, J.J. Watt, who came off a 2-win season just 3 years ago, had 2 9-7 seasons to follow that up. J.J. Watt is the best player in football.
Remember when we did our fantasy draft? You, me, and Molly. And you made the mistake of going for a quarterback first. You took the best player overall on the board, Aaron Rodgers, but because of scarcity at the position, Molly and I started taking running backs and wideouts because there was a greater drop-off from the elite than there is at quarterback. The same thing applies here. Scarcity at the position helps J.J. Watt in this argument in terms of the distance he's put between himself and the next best guy versus the distance that the quarterbacks have put, the elite ones, between themselves and the other elite quarterbacks.
That's not the measuring stick. I don't want to hear that nonsense as a measuring stick. I ain't even buying that, but I will get back to the fantasy football about this. Let's make sure we're honest with the American people.
Oh, here we go.
I never played, hold on, I never played fantasy football in my life. I never participated in a draft in my life. And I was given a list, and I was led to believe that the quarterback position had to be picked first. Molly hoodwinked me.
Oh, stop.
She
I just
cheated.
owned you.
She cheated, and so she could get her hands on Antonio Brown. I'm a Steelers fan. You think I wouldn't have picked Antonio Brown as my first receiver? Come
Stephen
on.
A., we have to move on, but
Yes.
in closing, I have 2 words for you.
In closing.
Davion Clowney. That's all I want to say.
Speaking of which,
should be ashamed of
he had a
yourself.
sack in
I'm
his
snoring.
first preseason game,
that's pretty good.
Clowney versus the Saints. I did not cheat people. I just know the rules. Strategy.